All right, so we're back. We just got the news that Jonas Valanciunas is getting traded.
Balunkunas.
Volunkunas,
Volunkunas.
our boy, another Toronto player. So many Toronto players this year are gonna get traded or sign with new teams. DeMar, Kyle Lowry. Jonas was the first domino to fall, first trade of the offseason.
The most
Um,
unexpected, in my opinion.
yeah, I didn't honestly, this was not on my radar. I expected honestly a bigger move to start off. But for anyone that doesn't know what we're talking about, just earlier today, or last night, yesterday, sorry, uh, Jonas Valanciunas and Steven Adams got swapped for each other. The whole deal is the Pelicans get Jonas Valanciunas and the 17th and 51st picks of this year's draft. And then Steven Adams and Eric Bledsoe go to the Grizzlies. And the Grizzlies also get the 10th and the 40th pick in this year's draft, as well as a top 10 protected pick next year, which is via the Lakers.
Yeah.
So they're getting three picks in return for two, and they're getting two players in return for one. But the best player is actually going to the Pelicans because that would be Jonas Valanciunas. So
hmm
there's a lot to unpack here. What do you guys think?
I feel like this is a very interesting trade. I feel like the Pelicans, it's a good trade for them because I feel like it's a better fit with Zion, but it's also not a bad trade at all for the Grizzlies because they're getting the 10th pick actually, so that's really big upgrade. And then they're also getting Steven Adams, which if Jaren Jackson gets healthy, he's able to spread the floor a little bit. Maybe Steven Adams is more effective with the Grizzlies.
I think so too, because he can still fill in the same role of rebounding big who sets big screens, rolls hard to the rim. He can do all that. I don't think he's as offensively potent, or he definitely isn't as offensively potent as Jonas. Jonas, the reason the Pelicans are making this move is because they feel like Jonas has the adequate skills as a big man to complement Zion. And
Yeah.
with Zion attacking downhill, they didn't want Steven Adams taking up space and Eric Bledsoe who can't shoot. So they cleared them out for a big man that can shoot and that will
Yeah.
shoot.
I don't know why they traded for him in the first place, though.
The Grizzlies?
No, the Pelicans for Steven
Like,
Adams.
well, I feel like they thought Steven Adams would just be a good piece that would help them win. But then early on in that experiment, they figured out that Zion doesn't like shooting and he won't really shoot, even though his percentages are kind of bogus. Like he's not as good of a shooter as his percentages would say. Um, but Steven Adams and Zion just don't work well together, and they think Zion and Jonas is a better combo, and I think so too. I think it's gonna work, and it has to work because there's only so long you can have a player like Zion upset. Not winning 2 years in a row is enough for someone of that caliber. I feel
Yeah,
like. But yeah,
you definitely want to make Zion happy because we've seen what's happened.
we
Maybe not
definitely
now,
have.
but the domino will fall eventually.
Yeah. Yo, I remember Param was telling me as well how the Grizzlies they get the lottery pick now. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
really good.
they moved up in the lottery, so the player that's linked to the 10 spot and to the Grizzlies actually as well is sorry, it's Josh Giddey. I don't really know much about who this is. His comp is Ben Simmons, and he played in the NBL, so he played in the same league as Lamelo and Jello did
Yeah,
over in Australia. But this draft is really deep, so I feel like the Grizzlies, especially with the moves they've made the last couple of years, they've been stellar in the draft. I feel like any pick would do for them, and them moving into the lottery is huge. But not only that, they also moved up 11 spots in the second round, which you could laugh at that all you want, but
second
with
round
how well that team
players.
drafts,
Yeah, second round players are very valuable. Like you can't scoff at that. People just say, "Oh, just throw in a couple second round picks." Like, nah, those people can be useful.
I remember the Raptors got thrown in two second round picks um, back when they traded. What was that point guard's name that was on the Raptors that got replaced by Corey Joseph? Gravis Vasquez. Gravis Vasquez was our point guard. We
Yeah,
traded him to the Bucks. The Bucks gave two second round picks, and those second round picks turned into Norman Powell and somebody else good that's not there anymore. But point being, the Bucks could have had a player like Norman Powell on the roster right now that would have helped them win the championship instead of playing in place of Pat Connaughton, and they still won the championship. But it just goes to show what kind of players are available in the second round if you look hard enough.
Yeah, I mean, like Isaiah Thomas was drafted 60th. Like
I feel like
anything is possible.
Isaiah Thomas was just passed on because of his height.
Yeah, well, you never know. Maybe you find the next one of him, and he can still be effective.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true. But that's what you're saying. Like you're looking for that Isaiah Thomas or Manu Ginobili or Draymond Green or even a Norman Powell with how many good players already on that roster. A player just like that
I feel
that
like
can make an instant impact.
4-year players are very slept on, and they're valuable in the second round.
Yeah, for sure. But that's what people are saying about Cameron Johnson too. Like he was older, so people are saying, okay, his potential's not that high. Why is he going 11th overall in the draft? Like it doesn't make any sense. But like, when you
Yeah.
look back at it, revisionist history, players like that can make an instant impact, and Cameron Johnson did. Like they almost won the championship,
You can't say almost
and they
everything
won.
got swept, but like
They got swept 4 in a row afterwards, but they were up 2-0, and Cameron Johnson was a huge part of them getting those 2 wins and getting to the finals in general. He had some big games, even throughout the regular season.
yeah.
And he has potential to grow still into a better jump shooter because he struggled a little bit for sure, and better defender, better ball handler. Like there's something to work off of is the point I'm trying to make here.
Yeah.
So you can get that kind of player at the 10th slot or the 11th slot because Cameron Johnson was the 11th pick, and that's the kind of player the Grizzlies need right now because they're trying to make the playoffs. John Morant almost did it last year, or he did do it this last year. They were the 8th seed and they won the play-in. They beat the Warriors.
Yep.
Yo,
Anyways.
the going back to the Grizzlies as well. I like how they're setting up with the young players. I think it's good. And Param was also telling me how like now that the Grizzlies can, or not the Grizzlies, the Pelicans can match any offer for Lonzo Ball.
Oh yeah, that's a huge part.
Yeah.
They could also have
the contracts of Steven Adams and Eric Bledsoe are bigger than the contract they're getting back in Jonas Valanciunas. So that clears up enough money for them to sign back Lonzo or match Lonzo's offer sheet, bring him back, and still be under the cap. Granted, if somebody offers him 30 million, he's gone, but that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Another thing to add on to that, and let's say the Pelicans cannot grab Lonzo Ball. Do you think they have the power to get Kyle Lowry?
I mean, it's the Pelicans have the power to they can bring back Lonzo Ball at whatever dollar figure they want to. They can go into the cap to get him, and they have bird rights, so they can get him. He's a restricted free agent. He can't just leave. So it's a positive for them. But if somebody throws a Godfather offer of like $30 million, then you're gonna have to think about whether or not you want to do that and hamstring your future this quickly.
I mean,
paying
but at the
somebody like that.
same time, I feel like it's interesting. You could maybe even like sign someone like Kyle and have Lonzo at
Yeah,
2.
I'll do a sign and trade for Lonzo Ball any day. I'll do
No.
that for if he makes $25 million a year. I'll take Lonzo Ball at that dollar figure. For
I was
sure,
saying-
the
I
Raptors
was
need
saying-
that.
I know. I'm saying the Pelicans could sign
Wow.
Kyle Lowry
Yeah,
because
That's what I'm
they can
saying.
go. They can go into the cap with Lonzo, right? So they can sign Kyle, run him at the 2, have Kyle at the.
wait, do
point
they have
guard.
that much money though?
Yeah, they'll have enough cap for that.
Oh, really?
I think
So
so.
that's even more interesting. But I don't think Kyle Lowry would go to that team because he wants to win a championship, and that's not gonna happen there yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, like that's what I'm saying. Like this whole deal that they made, even though they moved down in the draft, they get the best player in the deal, as well as still 2 shots in the draft. It's not like they're not drafting this year.
Yeah.
They can still make something out of those. There's potential for their 2 picks to turn out better than the other 2 picks that Memphis got. So
All in all, it's a good trade. I think both sides.
Yeah, definitely.
it's a good way to get it all started off the whole
It's
trade
very-
season, the
it's
whole
a-
off season.
It's a very complex trade. There's more to it than what meets the eye, but I feel like that's with every single trade.
I feel like this trade must have been brewing for a couple of weeks because there's no way that a team can just decide, okay, we don't want the 10th pick now.
Yeah,
That's
very
true.
Anyways, I don't think we have much more to add. So we're gonna end this segment of the podcast here. But the next segment is gonna be us reviewing the Atlantic pod. We did this a few weeks ago, a couple weeks ago, during game 2 of the finals. So you're gonna hear some finals takes that are quite inaccurate. That's all I'm gonna say.
And we're back here for another podcast. As of their current recording, the Phoenix Suns are up 2-1 in the NBA Finals, but that is not the topic of today's discussion. Whoever is listening would hear this after the NBA Finals are over. Tonight's pod is going to be a discussion and some proposals for how teams could get better heading into the next season, 2021, 2022. And just general moves, whether that's coaching, trades, player and roster moves that they could make just to take another step. And I'm going to preface this by saying that in today's NBA, every team needs shooting. So that's not going to be our focus because there's 30 teams and all 30 teams could use another shooter. With that being said, let's get right into it. With the first team, we have the Philadelphia 76ers. And I think this is the biggest team to discuss out of all 30 teams because of the elephant in the room, Ben Simmons. What do you guys think the Sixers should do with Ben Simmons this year?
Shank, you mind if I take it?
Yeah, go ahead.
I personally think Ben Simmons, I feel like he's a great fit for the Sixers, but at the same time, I also feel like the Sixers don't need him. He's a great, he's a great player, but just like with nowadays teams, I just like obviously like he struggles with the shooting, right? But I just feel like in general they need the shooting, and I feel like some picks, like maybe some like, I don't know, throwing out some names, maybe like CJ McCollum would be a good pick for the
That's one of the
Sixers.
ones I had. CJ McCollum, it kind of works for both teams, the CJ McCollum deal, because Dame gets his pick and roll partner and Embiid gets his pick and roll partner. And in today's NBA, it's all about the pick and roll. You could have whatever plays you want. You can run floppies, you can run fist sets, anything you want. But at the end of the day, the execution of the pick and roll is what wins and loses games.
Yep.
So I feel like that's a great deal for either side. My perfect fit for that team would be Bradley Beal. And I think that they could facilitate a deal because their salaries match up pretty well. So you have to do a bit of finagling with the salary cap with that. But I think if the Wizards were to go in the direction of blowing it up, Bradley Beal and Joel Embiid would probably be one of the top 3 or 4 duos in the league next year. I don't know. What do you guys think about the Bradley Beal trade?
I definitely think Bradley Beal heading there would be a great pick for the Sixers. As you said, the pick and roll is one of the best offenses in the NBA. I definitely see if that actually becomes a thing. I definitely see the Sixers becoming like finals contenders, and I definitely think like they can have a good team then. And actually,
I think they give, especially if the Nets, who we'll talk about later, don't make some key additions, then I think they'll give a Nets a run for their money, especially because the hole the Nets have, Embiid will dominate against that team. That's just a given when there's no other big men on that side.
Yeah.
And another trade that I had here was Shank's guy Michael Porter Jr. and
Jay
and Monty Morris of the Denver Nuggets going to the Sixers in a package deal for Ben Simmons. And I think that gives them two things. That gives them a steady point guard. Marcus Morris has one of the best assist to turnover ratios in the league. He's very adept at keeping the ball under control and controlling the game. And then you get a 6'10" wing that just gets buckets. There's nothing you can do to stop Michael Porter because he can just rise and fire at any moment. And I think him in a pick and roll duo with Embiid, given that he does increase or improve his ball handling ability and his playmaking ability, would be a dominant duo as well, because then you have a 6'10 and a 6'11 guy. I think Joel is 6'11, 7 foot. I think it's safe to say that's a lethal pick and roll duo.
Hmm.
I definitely think so. Yeah, I mean MPJ, right? We all know he's the underrated threat, right? Like he can do everything in my opinion. He could shoot, dribble, he can dunk.
I think
Right?
his value went up because when Murray went down, hopefully he's back soon, but when Murray went down, a lot of those shots had to go to Michael Porter just out of necessity. And I think he did a
Mhm.
great job in that added um bonus of shots. He produced very well, and I think he played up his value. But I think to fully unlock Michael Porter and to fully unlock Ben Simmons, a trade for the both of them for each other would be a good deal.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right, so the next team we have the Knicks. Sorry, the next team we have here is the Knicks. I'll
Yep.
let Bartender
So
take this one.
that's my team. I was just doing some research on them. My personal opinion, what I think they need. Honestly, I think that they really need a solid point guard. I, I I think the Knicks have been struggling with guards for a while. Uh, I think a solid pickup for them would be Kyle Lowry. I myself and Param and Shank, we are all Toronto fans, so seeing Kyle Lowry leave would be devastating. But I definitely think Knicks could use Kyle Lowry and just his veteranship to make their team better. What do you guys think on that?
I think Kyle Lowry is the perfect player for a lot of teams. The Knicks especially, because Derrick Rose is cool and all, but he's not a playoff starting caliber point guard. And that's just it sounds like something that you would say, okay, Derrick Rose, he's a very good offensive player. He's a very good player in general, and he should be a starter. But I think him backing up Kyle Lowry and playing spot minutes alongside of him would be the perfect combination for the Knicks, especially because they've been lacking that playmaking style of point guard. The last time they had a great playmaking point guard was Jason Kidd, and he was old. So they really have not had the playmaking kind of point guard in their history since the 60s with Walt Frazier.
Yep.
And
Mhm.
I think that'd be a great deal for them to pick up somebody like Kyle Lowry.
Yeah, either Kyle Lowry or even Lonzo Ball. I feel like Lonzo Ball really improved this year. And, whether the Pelicans choose to keep him or not, I heard he's probably not going to be returning. So, I feel like he's like, because the issue with Kyle Lowry, and I love Lowry, I'm a Raptors fan, but
He's
like
short.
he's short. And this isn't really an issue because we know Lowry ages like wine, but his age is another thing that, some people, like GMs as well, might consider. And
I
I don't
think in
know.
a Lowry deal, if they were to do one, it would be a 3-year deal in the realm of $80 million. And that third year would have to be either a team option, which Lowry wouldn't give up, or it would be a non-guaranteed contract, which makes more sense, especially because in that situation, if Kyle Lowry says he doesn't want to do that, then both teams can amnesty that, and it will be in the realm of $3 or $4 million, and that's not really a big salary cap hit in terms of amnestying a guy for a year, and then he can go somewhere else or retire, do whatever he wants to do in that situation. So I think Kyle Lowry is a great option for them, especially
Yep.
because they were the 5 seed this year, and
Yeah.
they played above expectations. But with Kyle Lowry there, I think that would be the expectation is a 5 or a 6 seed spot.
And
And then
I
obviously
love the
again,
Knicks, but yeah, Alfred Payton, we've seen how he performed, and it's just not really cutting it for them.
he's not going to cut it for anybody. He's a great defender, don't get me wrong, but that team is lacking playmaking, and Kyle Lowry is ideal. He's a steady playmaker that can dribble,
Yeah.
pass, and shoot as well.
Yeah. Another thing I want to talk about the Knicks is Randall. I definitely think Randall should stay with the Knicks and then see if maybe the team themselves can get another pick to play along Randall. I just think that itself will improve the team a lot because as of now, the Knicks, when we talk about the Knicks anybody talks about the Knicks, you don't really see them as like a big playoff contender, like, you know, for example,
Yeah, like
the
second round
Nets or-
exit, first round
I think
exit.
that at most
Right.
with Kyle Lowry, even I think the most there would be is a second round out. Like I don't see them going past the second round.
Yeah. I mean, if RJ Barrett, has some crazy growth, this year, he could be a viable third, second option for them. That's like consistent. I feel like that could really help him push it to
I
even
think-
conference finals.
I think if Lowry's the guy they get in the offseason, I think it needs to be him that steps up. Speaking of RJ Barrett, I think he needs to be the guy that steps up because your second scorer can't be a 6-foot dude.
Yeah.
So if it's RJ and then Kyle Lowry's the third option, I could see a realm in which they make it a tough out in the second round for a team. Because RJ has made huge strides on the defensive end. And I
Yeah.
think that's underrated. All right, so the next team that we have here to discuss in the Atlantic Division is the Brooklyn Nets. And listeners might think, okay, the Nets are stacked. They have Kyrie, James, and KD. They have Dinwiddie coming back next year. What do they really need to improve? But they do have a glaring hole in their roster, and it's the center position. And it sucks that they had to trade Jared Allen because he would have been perfect with the team they have. But to facilitate a deal for Harden, they did need to give up Jared Allen. That was the only way they were going to get it done. So the trade I have proposed for their team to get that hole filled is for them to facilitate a deal to get Miles Turner from the Pacers, who themselves are trying to split up the Turner and Sabonis big man duo. And I think Turner's the odd one out because Sabonis is a better player. But Turner does the kind of things that the Brooklyn Nets need, mainly pick and roll, rolling and popping. He can hit the three. He can stretch out to 30 feet, and he can catch lobs. But the big hole that they have on that side of the floor, or on that team, is on the defensive side of the floor. And I think with his rim protecting ability, I think that plugs that defensive deficiency right away. I don't know. What do you guys think about Miles Turner on the Nets?
Shank, you want this one?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's going to be pretty fucking obvious. It's going to make the team 10 times better, bro, in both ends, defensively and offensively. He's just a great player.
He is. He's the ideal player, and he's very unselfish. And since his rookie year, when I saw him playing against the Raptors in the playoffs, he's always been an unselfish guy that just wants to win. So him paired along with the other three makes perfect sense, because then you have a guy out there that doesn't bitch and moan like other centers for the ball, and instead just gets to his position on the offensive end,
Plays his role.
and plays his role, in
I
which
can see him and Harden having crazy plays together.
yeah, and in that role, he probably averages a career high in points anyways, just because of the gravity of the other three. And then on the defensive side of the game, that's where he makes his money, blocking shots, getting rebounds, affecting shots in the passing lanes, just making it hard for other teams. I think the only issue they would face with Turner is he's not big enough for the Jokic's and the Embiids of the world. But with an athletic team like that, you can figure that out once you make a deal for a guy like that. But that's the number one thing they need to do.
Okay.
And so the next team we have is our Toronto Raptors, if Shank wants to take it from here.
Raptors. Yeah, man. Honestly, 2021, it was kind of weird because, it wasn't the Toronto Raptors, it was the Tampa Bay Raptors. So, it wasn't really our year this year, but we played amazing. And I think some pretty obvious things from the get-go is establishing a better center. I'm not saying Key Birch is a bad center. He's pretty solid. But regardless, we should get another
Realistically, he's a
backup.
backup in the NBA. He's not a starting center.
Exactly. And I feel like we also need to figure out the entire Kyle Lowry situation because, I love Kyle Lowry. I want to see him as a Raptor, but
he's the greatest Raptor ever. I don't see an argument for anybody else. Even Kawhi, who won us the championship, I think Kyle Lowry is still the greatest Raptor despite that.
He was the leader, bro. He was the leader.
He's the emotional leader. He's a dog, man, and he gives a lot to a lot of teams if he goes to those teams. But just for the Raptors' sake, I hope we get a sign and trade so that if he wants to leave, we can at least get something back. And for him to go to a team like the Sixers, which is home for him, he would need to do a sign and trade, so we would be getting something back. And there is a world, and it's very unlikely, very, very unlikely. We'd have to give up a lot to do it. But there is a world where we could trade Lowry and possibly Siakam and get back a Ben Simmons in a deal. And I think that would be a really good deal for either side because Siakam struggled as the number one guy. So he wouldn't have to be that anymore with Embiid. And Lowry would be playing in Philly, which is something that a lot of people are speculating is something he wants to do. And then the Raptors get their superstar.
Yeah.
And let's be real.
A young superstar.
A young superstar. And Ben Simmons is a superstar. And I don't want this to turn into the Ben Simmons pod, but it kind of right now with the landscape of the NBA, it kind of is just going to be that because the guys that are seemingly available right now, number one is Ben Simmons. That's out of him. There's a chance that players like Zach LaVine and Bradley Beal get moved as well. So again, any of those guys on the Raptors, we could be facilitating a deal for one of those. But I think the number one thing that the Raptors need to focus on is the number 4 pick, which they get to decide in another 16 days. So if they get one of the Jalen's, if they get a big man, I think the best way in the draft, the mistake a lot of teams make is the best way to operate in the draft is always to just get the best player available and then see what happens from there because you can always trade that player down. You can always trade that player for another superstar kind of player. But I think we need to draft one of the Jalen's. Mine, it would be Jalen Green. And then if Lowry were in a sign and trade deal, then
get a new point guard.
Whichever Jalen we get would get his spot.
Yeah. Basically, another thing that I wanted to mention is like kind of touched upon it. Like we got to develop our young core. Re-signing Gary Trent Jr. is a priority because that guy is a bucket getter. I love him, man. So
I think he has potential, and he's one of those. Bill Simmons says this all the time, and I love it. It's a great comment. He's one of those irrational confidence guys where he sees a player like a CJ McCollum or a Bradley Beal or a Zach LaVine, and he thinks he's on their level, and he plays like it, and he shoots like it, and he has that level of confidence that could make him a 20-point per game scorer in the league. And
he's like, what, 23?
23, 24. He's young, so he has a long way to go. He has another 4 or 5 years before his prime. And in today's NBA, where it's all about shooting, he has it. So I think that trade, Powell for Gary Trent, was a steal of a deal for us, considering Norman Powell was going to get big money in the offseason. He probably would have left us for nothing.
Yeah.
All right, so the last team to round out the Atlantic Division is the Boston Celtics. And again, another obvious team for Kyle Lowry to go to. Again, it'd have to be a sign and trade. And I think in his situation, this would be the perfect team to go to because he could have a Chris Paul effect to a slightly lesser degree, obviously, because Chris Paul is Chris Paul. Nobody is Chris Paul right now in terms of playmaking and pick and roll efficiency. But Kyle Lowry is 80% of that, maybe 90%. And he gives you all of the same skill set things that Chris Paul gives you. And it's a good fit, in my opinion, because the Celtics have that Booker level scorer in Jason Tatum. But then they also have a second wing scorer in Brown that they could keep or trade or do it, whatever, a number of things with. And make a big run. And I think that the Celtics are on the brink of a big run very soon here. The big thing with the Celtics that kind of sucks looking back at is within the last 5 years, they could have gotten any number of guys. They could have gotten Paul George, they could have gotten Jimmy Butler, they could have gotten Kawhi Leonard, and they could have gotten Anthony Davis. And it sucks that they didn't pull a trigger on any of those guys. But they are where they are now. And Jalen Brown is better than they thought that he would be, especially on the offensive end, because everybody knew he had the defensive ability. But what do you guys think about Kyle Lowry on the Celtics?
Kyle Lowry on the Celtics, playing with Tatum. I can see that being a possibility. I definitely think I see, as a Raptors fan, it's kind of hard seeing like Kyle Lowry in any other jersey but the Raptors
Especially
jersey.
the freaking Celtics jerseys,
especially like division rivals like the Sixers and the Celtics, who we're going to see 4 times a year. It kind of sucks that he's probably going to be gone, but that's just the reality we're living right now. The Raptors aren't really a championship contender, and Kyle Lowry's 36, 37, and he needs to win a couple more rings. I think personally he's a Hall of Famer regardless. If he retired today, he's in the Hall of Fame, first ballot. But as a competitor, I think he wants to win a couple more before.
Yeah, for sure. And then, he would do well with the Celtics. They need a solid point guard right now, so he fills that hole. And at the same time, what he offers to the Celtics, like, they're going to be a different dimension, man.
And then
they already have crafty players.
Yeah, they do. They do have lots of crafty players. But speaking of holes on their team, one of them would be filled if they got Kyle Lowry. But I think the other hole that they have on their roster, despite Al Horford, despite Robert Williams, is that center position. I think they could make an upgrade there. And I could see a world in which they have Brown with Horford's salary, and they trade for a star level player. I don't see who that is in terms of big men right now. And I don't see them doing a deal with the Sixers for Ben Simmons, because I think Brown is better than Ben Simmons right now in terms of trade value. So it's going to be interesting what they do, but there is a redundancy there in terms of the Tatum and Brown dynamic. And I think they need to move one of them. And again, the odd one out would be Jaylen Brown, in my opinion. So that rounds it out for tonight's pod on the Atlantic Division. We'll be back soon with more Eastern Conference content. So just be on the lookout for that.
Thanks, guys.
It's been real. You guys have a good night and stay safe.
Hey, guys. Thanks for tuning into today's pod. Shout out to Kaiser Draws for the logo and YouTube banner. And huge shout out to Vic.Ash for the music. Links for the pages will be in the description below. Once again, thanks for listening. Like, comment, and subscribe for more YouTube content.